to learn as I got money, and it was almost like someone pulled the curtain back for me, is how wealthy individuals play the tax game.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a tax game that the average person has no idea is going on.
Got to talk about money. Tax avoidance is a key skill to building wealth. And by the way, we don't talk about, I speak openly about I won't call it tax avoidance, but my tax strategies. If you're, it's like they said, if you're a prisoner of war, you have an obligation to escape. If you're trying to build wealth, you have an obligation to pay as little tax as possible. Do it legally, but Apple will issue their IP to Apple International in Ireland, and then they will use Apple Ireland. They will license their IP to America, charge them tens of billions of dollars, thereby increasing the income of Apple Ireland at a lower tax rate and decreasing the income in the US, thereby lowering their overall tax rate. That is pure tax avoidance. Every organization, every corporation does this to the hilt, and so should you. By the way, I will vote for people who have an alternative minimum tax. We have to raise taxes on corporations. The 25 wealthiest Americans pay between 6 and 8% tax rate.
What are the tax games they're playing?
All right. Before we get into that, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Man, this is something that I did not learn till I was well into my late 30s. Almost getting ready to almost turn 40, and no one ever talked to me about taxes. It was something I honestly had just very to little no idea about how the game was played. And I just remember I was one of those people that were always frustrated when you struggle, and you finally get a good job and you see the amount of taxes you pay, and you're like, whoa, what is going on? And then you see all these, and if depending on where you live, what part of the country you live, there may be more um, taxes taken out, and all these little different little state and local taxes, and you're like, what? And I don't care where you live on the West Coast, it's all expensive, right? And I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, like what is going on? Then I finally, bought my first investment property, and then hired a, accountant person, tax person, professional, which I'm not sponsored by anyone. My channel only has like 325 people, so trust me, I'm not sponsored. But I will say, having I don't think you need this until you get to a certain point, and that point is either you have rental property or you make a significant amount of money in stocks or whatever. You're vested, have a business. At that point, I do think it's worth hiring excuse me. Oh my goodness. Sorry, man, my kids wear me out. I think it's worth having a tax professional, and they're worth their weight in gold, because they're going to be able to make sure they go through the process and everything is done like correctly, and you have tax sheltering, and real estate is great for that. Um, but yeah, I didn't know, I didn't come from money. I don't know didn't know how any of this works. I still don't know how all of it works, but now I have a better idea. Now I look at it from a totally different perspective. And what I will say is, again, I am not a tax advisor. This is not that type of channel at all. A little disclaimer there, but hire you a good tax accountant and let them go to work. And you could do your part and have everything organized, but this is how they play. So let's get back into it.
Oh,
The rich people.
there's a bunch of them. First and foremost, it's you buy stocks, you never sell them, you borrow against them.
Okay, explain that to me like I'm a 10-year-old. So
Sure, you own $100 in Amazon stock.
Yeah.
You need money to buy something instead of selling the stock, and say it's gone up 50%. I say it's doubled. you would have to realize a capital gain and pay long-term capital gains on that $50 gain. No, just borrow against it and let the stock continue to grow. And you pay a little bit of interest, hopefully from your current income, but basically it's invest, borrow against it, and die. Put it into a trust and then pass it on to your kids. There's a lot of state arbitrage. Jeff Bezos just moved to Florida to spend more time with dad. Isn't that sweet, Stephen? Isn't that nice? No, it has nothing to do with his father. Give me a fucking break. He aggregated $160 billion in wealth. He would pay about another 8 or 10% in state taxes in Washington because he's got to leverage the public school system, the University of Washington, the Seattle-Tacoma Airport, the hospital system. But in the U.S., you're allowed to peace out to Texas or Florida and pay no income tax. So all the people shitpost in California or New York, show me someone who's all of a sudden can't handle San Francisco politics. I'm going to show you someone who needs to recognize a capital gain and has all of a sudden decided they like Texas politics. It's really not it's very disingenuous. There's the tax loophole I've leveraged. In the U.S., there's something called 1202 or qualified small business. So when I started L2.
What's L2?
L2 is my analytics company. I started it. I invested a small amount of money. Because it was a business worth less than $50 million, your business would qualify in the U.S. as QSB, small business. If you hold on to that stock in that company for longer than 5 years, when you sell it, the first 10 million or 10 times the basis are tax-free. So the first 10 million out of L2 was tax-free. Zero. That makes no sense. If that sounds like we're screwing the middle class, trust your instincts. I invested in a company, brought a company out of bankruptcy. I invested $2.5 million. The first 25 million, got very lucky. The company got sold for a lot of money. The first 25 million were tax-free. The tax code has gone from 400 pages to 4,000. And that extra 3,600 pages are to turn rich people into super rich people. Now, the myth around taxes is the following.
I don't want to skip right past that because I think that is a very crucial point. And I think Robert Kiyosaki talks about this too, Rich Dad, Poor Dad author. For those of you who do not know, we got to change our thinking. And I know it's hard, especially when you live in check to check, bills are due. You got this going on, that going on. I get it. Look, at I'm yawning on my channel just because I wore out, and I'm not crying about it. It's just life. But there is something that to be said when you are at that point, when you hit that cruising altitude, and that's really, really hard to get to. And I can't even say I'm there yet. But when you get to when the fog dissipates a little bit and you can kind of see clearer, this stuff is important. They are literally handing you the playbook on how to get rich. And there's a lot of guys out there now, whereas before social media, you didn't have that. But a lot of guys are now talking about it and saying what you should do. Again, hire your trusted person and vet them well. One person told me the way you can vet a tax strategist or whoever's preparing your taxes, send their report. They give you a report to read through. Once they've gathered all your information, you can, hire someone else to just do a quick review. If you really wanted to just do a check and balance, that's a good way to do it. But anyway, not learning the tax code, but changing your way you think and feel about it and not let it be so emotional. And money can be very emotional, I get. But if you can reframe your thinking, Little Duval says this thing, and he says, if you change the way you see things, the things you see will change. Say that again. If you change the way you see things, the things you see will change. If you look at the tax code as a reward system, you will quickly try and figure out how you can get those rewards. Most of us will get these credit cards and we see, rewards, points. You should look at the tax code like that. Look at it as this is a point system. What I can do rewards to gain more rewards. Look at it that way and you'll be free of it. Hire your professional, let them go to work. But I think I don't want to gloss over what he just said because I think that's a brilliant point. All right. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe and tell a friend.
Following that rich people don't pay their taxes. Actually, the sort of rich pay a disproportionate amount of taxes. So if you make all of your money from current income, that is salary, and you make a lot, you're actually paying more taxes than anyone. So mom's a baller. She's a partner in a prestigious law firm making $1 million a year. Dad's a chiropractor, has 3 people working for him. He makes $1.6 million a year, total ballers. In order to make that kind of money, they probably have to live in an urban center in a blue state, where at that level, they're paying 45, 48, sometimes 52% tax rates. But if dad decides to raise capital and buy a bunch of chiropractic clinics and they become investments and he sells them for $50 million, his tax rate plummets. So you don't want to be a super earner. You want to earn enough money to invest so you can become a super owner. The top 25 wealthiest Americans pay about 8% in tax, right? So actually, the bottom half pay almost no tax. They pay a lot of consumption taxes, but it's the super earners that get screwed, what I call the workhorses. But once you make the jump to light speed and you own things and you make your money from buying and selling assets, your tax rate plummets.
The really sort of actionable thing there for the average person as well is probably the first point where you said a lot of what rich people do is they'll buy a stock. So I'll spend 10K on Amazon stock, and then I go to a bank and the bank give me a $5,000 loan against my Amazon stock tax free.
Right.
And I just hold the Amazon stock. Now I've got $5,000 tax free. If the Amazon stock goes to $20,000 in value, then I can go to the bank and say it's gone up now. Give me another $5,000, and I just spend and live off that money. Now, if the Amazon stock collapses, I'm fine because the loan was against the stock. So they'll sell the stock at a certain point as it's collapsing to get their money back.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to get into too much trouble, but leverage is how smart people go broke. But the idea is that one of the great tax schemes in history is that stocks grow. Think of yourself as a stock. You go up in value $1 million a year. You're making $1 million a year doing a very successful podcast. Every year, the government in the UK is going to take 40 cents of that, 40% of it. If you own $1 million in stock and it goes to 2 million, you don't get taxed on it till you sell it.
Yeah, so just never sell it.
Never sell it.
And that's what Elon's doing with his companies.
Sell it.
People say he's got, $200 billion, whatever. In fact, he's borrowing tax-free against those companies.
And then when he finally needs to sell it to pay off some of those loans, he moves to Texas, despite the fact he built all his wealth in California.
Smart. I think one of the great advantages of life is, as it relates to wealth creation, is really getting good tax advice, because I've sat here over and over again with people that have great tax advice and some people who didn't have any at all. And the outcomes are quite frankly shocking. The variance in outcomes are quite frankly shocking, from one person going bankrupt to the other person becoming a multi-billionaire. And it comes down to, some of it comes down to their tax strategy and how they thought about tax. And being around a lot of people now that are masters in tax, it was like, I describe it as someone pulled back a curtain that I never knew was there. And all these people were doing magic behind this curtain, and no one ever told me that curtain existed. It's called tax. Well, we don't all pay the same tax.
Because we're not supposed to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt. And as you start investing, you start acquiring properties, maybe you start doing other things, even investing in stock market, and you get these returns. You do a cash out refinance, all of these things that you're not taxed on. You're like, wait a second. It's like you're walking into this place and like everything, you walk into the store and everything's free. You're like, really? I could just grab this and walk out? That's literally how I felt. And it has forever ruined me, if you will. Because you wake up out in the matrix once you realize, like, it's not about going to go earn a big paycheck from a company. That's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing it at all. You should go do that. However, that can't be the be all end all. You need to reinvest your money and get those dollars to work for you and go bring back some more dollars. That once I had that shift in thinking, that paradigm shift, it really changed the way I saw things. Good point.
Yeah, not talking about it is rich people trying to keep poor people down.
Yeah.
Because rich people talk about their taxes all the time. Brightest woman in my entire professional universe is a woman named Lucy Lee, who is my tax Yoda, who works at a big law firm that I pay $1,800 an hour to figure out the smartest. When I set up a company, I talk to my tax person. when I'm about to get a big payment from my podcast distribution company, I talk to my tax person first. It is everything. But the key when you're young is to become an owner, not an earner. You're an earner. You want to bust a move out of earning and develop an army of capital that goes out and kills for you at night. $500 is a lot of money when you're 21. $500 when you're 21 is 10,000 when you're my age, right? And it's going to go really fast. So just start. And then once you become a super owner, you have 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, $1 million in assets, then you can become a super tax avoider. That sounded awful, didn't it? Sounded awful. That sounded awful. Sitting here with your bucket of sand. Oh my God.
A bunch of millionaires.
That's right. Talking about this is how we fuck the middle class, Stephen. This is how we really screw over the little guy.
Oh,
if you love The Diary of a CEO, Brandon, you watch.
Anyway, it's true. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for all the love and support, and you guys are the best. All right, see you in the next one.